the world's largest FinTech Fest, Global FinTech Fest, organized by Internet and Mobile Association of India, along with its sister organizations, Payments Council of India and FinTech Conversions Council and National Payments Corporation of India. The fest is presented by the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Government of India and Reserve Bank of India, and supported by Niti Aayog, Startup India and Invest India, and is presented by NPCI, powered by Razorpay, brought to you by Amazon Pay and WhatsApp, in association with Google Pay and Open Financial Technologies, and our digital payments partner, Cash Free Payments. The second edition of the summit, with the theme FinTech Empowering a Global Digital Economy, will provide an in-depth understanding of the latest business, policy, investment, and technology developments within the FinTech landscape globally. We would like to welcome you all for a fireside chat on driving inclusion through digitization. And as you can see, our eminent speakers are here with me on screen. Let me take the pleasure to welcome Shri Rana Ashutosh Kumar Singh, Deputy Managing Director, Strategy and Chief Digital Officer at State Bank of India. A very welcome to you, sir.
Hi, good morning.
And we have with us Ms. Meghna Suryakumar, Founder and CEO, CrediWatch, to moderate this session. Over to you, Ms. Suryakumar.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome, Mr. Rana. Really a pleasure to be able to talk to you today. As you can see, the topic is, driving, financial inclusion through digitization. And you've been a tenured officer at SBI for over 30 years, and you have a wide variety of experience, with retail banking, human resources, international banking, and also corporate banking when you started your career. And I think you worked in SBI locations across the world. So as an expert and as a fintech leader and as a leader in a PSU bank, what do you think that you would consider to be financial inclusion?
Hi, Meghna. Pleasure talking. And if I quote from Dr. Rangarajan Committee, so that is where I think our country has started financial inclusion initiatives. And I will quote, so financial inclusion is extending hassle-free savings, lending and other banking services at an affordable cost to the underprivileged and unbanked population in a fair and transparent manner by mainstream institutional players. So that was the committee's definition of financial inclusion. The overarching principle behind India's journey towards financial inclusion is echoed in the Gandhian philosophy. If we remember, it is Sarvodaya through Anantyodaya. So welfare of all through the upliftment of the weakest. So that is what we understand with the term financial inclusion. That is the core. The focus is on the basic objectives of inclusiveness and equity, which go beyond poverty alleviation. It also encompasses equality of opportunity for all sectors of society, including the poor, women, farmers, small enterprises, and others. RBI has devised a composite financial framework, if you recall, that is Financial Inclusion Index, centered around dimensions of access, uses, and quality to capture the extent of financial inclusion across the country. To my mind, the availability of affordable, easy to use, quality banking services coupled with commensurate financial literacy are the driving factors of financial inclusion. It is an effective tool for achieving inclusive growth, minimizing disparities of income, and channelizing the surplus incomes of the citizens for the development of the country. The major challenge, I would say, what we face, what we have as a nation, as a development country, emerging market, is reach and coverage. It's a large country with so much of diversity. The delivery mechanism, the channels, the sustainable business model, how to sustain the, suppose inclusion has happened, but how to sustain it in the long term. The technology aspect, the information barriers. Yeah.
That's very well put. That you think that financial inclusion is equity, fair access, and also uplifting the underprivileged and the underbanked by giving them access to better financial services. I mean, that's very well put. And you also already answered my second question of what the major hurdles were. So keeping that in mind, right? If you look at the Indian landscape today, A lot of these reports say that we're going to be 900 million internet users by 2025. We're at about 600 million right now. That means we're expecting a 45% growth in the next 5 years, right? And that means that there's an explosion of digitization, not only in the urban population, but also in the rural population. I think 31% of rural India has had access to internet in 2020, and the numbers are fast growing. So, according to you, if you keep in mind this explosion, what are the major modes through which digitization is driving inclusion in India? Is there anything that sets us apart from other emerging markets?
Yeah, that is definitely so. The way Aadhaar has delivered, the way it was conceptualized, the way it was implemented, and the way it has been leveraged, not only financial inclusion, so many things going forward. Maybe going forward, there will be diverse uses of Aadhaar, but the Jam Trinity, that was the game changer, and I don't see any other country having this kind of model. So they started with the Trinity called Jam, the Jandan Aadhaar, and mobile. So Aadhaar gave the platform and the identity, and then the mobile phones, cheaper availability of mobile phones. So 1,500 rupees, you get a smartphone. So and the internet coverage of the country. So all this put together, that was the game changer for our country. And I don't think any other country don't have this kind of population apart from China. But the experiment what we did as a country, that is unique. And I think there wouldn't be a better way also, alternative way also for a country like us with diversity our country has. There wouldn't be or couldn't be a better or other alternative also. Yeah.
I know, I agree with you. In fact, I think after the Aadhaar initiative, I think because of the Jandan, the JAM scheme, I think 80% of our country has had access to bank accounts, and especially when it comes to including women in financial services, or in the 80%, the majority of the population that has actually opened bank accounts have actually the beneficiaries have been women. Driving in a new underbanked sector into the digital domain. So, if you look at that's the statistics with respect to retail, which is very exciting, of bringing in the whole Bharat into the realm of financial inclusion. India also has a very interesting landscape on small businesses. We have 60 million small businesses today, right? And if you look at the rating landscape for the top five credit rating agencies, only 5% of them have been rated, like 50K entities have been rated by the top five rating agencies, and 96% of them are not. Also, if you look at the fact that 15% of small businesses have had access to finance, and 85% of these SMEs largely remain underbanked. So from that perspective, again, from SBI's perspective and as a leader in a PSU with your experience in corporate banking, especially when you started out, and if you look at the digitization initiatives that all the PSUs in the government are driving for small businesses, right? What would you think would be the perspective, not only from retail, but also from SME, right? What would financial inclusion look like for both these sectors?
So whether we call it retail, whether we call it MSME or the micro part of it. So I think by financial inclusion of SME, what we mean is micro part of the SME, the smaller units, entrepreneurs, street vendors, kind of running a small shop, doesn't have the reach of maybe financial institution or the credit facilities, doesn't maybe have the credit score. So the Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana, again, that was again a game changer. I would say that was intended to enhance the financial inclusion, particularly for the micro enterprises, and we can also call it retail. So essentially extending credit, and that was one part of it. But the moment you become part of the banking system or the credit architecture in the country, so that then definitely gives an opportunity for the institution and also as a customer for the micro enterprises. Then you expand to say the insurance schemes. So the scope enhances. So first is availability of credit, and then you get connected with the financial system in the country, and then you get benefited through other schemes what government or the institutions are driving towards financial inclusion. But Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana, that was definitely the core, I would say, towards that. Then the NBFCs coming in and the fintechs coming in and offering a small loans, so essentially expanding the reach to the unbanked population. So that was essentially, I would say, complementary to the efforts of commercial banks, the RRBs. So these institutions are supposed to drive the inclusion in the or extend the credit in the unbanked area. But again, the NBS is coming in with their reach, their infrastructure, their technology, their processes, and that definitely has helped. Then SHG ceiling going up, so then RBI redefining or expanding the scope of priority sector lending, essentially to nudge more lending towards the micro enterprises, essentially the companies or the entrepreneurs or the units who didn't have credit. So all this put together, a lot of work has happened with this account aggregator thing coming in. Definitely, I think the scope is going to be much larger now, and it will be, to my mind, this will be again a game changer for extending or financial inclusion, expanding financial inclusion initiatives. Yeah.
I mean, that was very interesting insights, especially with the NBFCs and the fintechs coming in to give loans to the small businesses. There's some very interesting facts in terms of the SME lending, right? If you look at the digital landscape, Boston Consulting Group says that the India SME lending opportunity is a $1 trillion opportunity in the next 5 years. And there are about 35 million entities that are eligible for credit, especially unsecured credit at cheaper rates. And the government and all the PSUs, with all of the 59 minutes initiative, and also the Mudra scheme, and the NBFCs, especially the fact that MSMEs are now declared to be a priority sector, and all MSMEs are geared up to kind of go to the next level in terms of their own business growth. We actively see many kinds of business models coming up in the fintech space, like you rightly said, which are supporting SME lending, be it neo-banking model, marketplace model, NBFC model, right? And supply chain financing model, invoice-based financing model, the TREDS platform. We kind of see that there's a lot of excitement and developments in this sector. So, my next question would be that as a business leader, right, when we look at these different developments that are happening and our financial economy is growing at such a fast pace, and fintech in India, I think, is one of the most booming ecosystems in the world, right? We're only second to some of the other economies in the world in terms of kind of investments that we attract. What would you think would balance risk and financial inclusion? And what are the financial services providers doing to enable financial inclusion while reducing risk? So, what would be a vantage point as a chief digital officer of a large PSU towards risk and inclusion?
So, being the largest bank in the country and the largest network, definitely we have the added and enhanced larger responsibility to drive the initiative. Everything which needs to be done for financial inclusion. This is our responsibility that we take it that way. And our sense is that the biggest support or the biggest contributor to the financial inclusion initiatives as a bank we got from our BC and CSP channels, so business correspondents and CSP channels, because the number of branches definitely that is not enough to enhance the reach or the reach we need to reach every nook and corner of the country. So BC channel is the most important. I would say that the most important support system for driving this initiative. And yeah, since we are in the business of banking, and the moment you say business of banking, definitely risk is somewhere inherent, whether you say or not. There is always a risk. So we always say this that banking is a business of risk. So we have the processes in place how to. So we have a proper risk matrix model for when we decide to onboard a particular business correspondent for us. Because it's not only financial risk for our clients, it's a reputational risk for the bank as well. And we have a very rigorous system of onboarding a business correspondent risk matrix model. We have the audit process to periodically audit the processes, actual implementation, how it is happening. Other thing, maybe a small process, if I can define how we try to manage this. But again, this is again evolving. So risk is always something which keeps evolving, and you have to then come forward with the solution how to, or if you have to foresee some other risk which might come in, you get some instances somewhere, and then you have to fix the process. But briefly, maybe 5-6 things I have to, if I can mention, is how we manage our CSP outlets. And so when you enter a CSP outlet, then if you can find that there are certain things essentially to take care of the risk part of it, like announcing transaction details in the regional language using multi the customers they can hear uh, this is what the transaction which has happened in my account. In the language they understand. The passbook of the customer is updated only through the barcode validation. That is again a risk mitigation measure for us. The audio visual creative we place at CSP outlets for customer awareness and guidance, because that is very critical and very important for us, because the kind of clientele we have who are served through the CSP outlets, we have to be very cognizant of the fact that we have to somehow do everything in our capacity to protect them, keep them safe. The mobile-based audit application we have uh, rolled out for flagging process or system breaches in the outlets. The adoption of zero tolerance approach, that the moment we get something against a particular CSP, there is immediate instruction to deactivate the CSP outlet. So these are the broad things we do to take care of the risk part of it. But again, like I mentioned, this is the most important channel for financial inclusion, and that has definitely delivered. I would say that has delivered for the bank, for the country. Yeah.
That's very well put. That keeping the customer first, and especially making the customer aware by using multiple languages, because SBI covers the entire breadth of the country to places where banking can not even dream of reaching. SBI has a reach there, so it's really fantastic to hear that the leading PSU in India has put customer awareness and customer obsession on the forefront, looking at every way to drive financial inclusion, and also at the same time ensuring that the customers are safe, protecting against online fraud, and also reducing the risk. So I have another follow-up question. So what do you think of the India stack? You mentioned about that in the beginning in terms of the Aadhaar, and the next step toward after that was the India stack, I think, which was kind of the first, let's say, the baby step that India took towards bringing in fintech and financial inclusion in India, and digitizing and being a leader in the financial services space. So what are your views on the India stack and other such multi-stakeholder approaches to building products and services for customers, right? How do they drive inclusion?
So when we talk about India stack, and this is, I think, generating a lot of interest globally, that how India could manage this. So the first thing and the foremost thing was the Aadhaar. It was very kind of huge initiative, a country of 130, yeah, it's a huge 1.3 billion people and huge task, but the way we handle this. So that was the first part of the stack, that you have a digital ID for the entire population. And that was the first prerequisite. The kind of platform we used, that is quite easy to enhance this, scale it up. So that was the first layer of the India stack. And the second layer is, of course, again something which is globally, I would say, there is no match. NPCI, the UPI part of it, the way it has in the last 10, 12 years, roughly 12 years, 12 years now. So the way it has enhanced the kind of transaction volume it is handling, the kind of ease you have in plugging in and scaling it up, building something new, the way NPCI has come up, so that is the second part of the India stack. And the third part, again, we are talking about the digital execution of, so paperless stack, the digital execution of documents and everything digital. And fourth stack, that is again, as of now, I would say the nascent stage, but initiative has been taken, that account aggregator system, that could be the fourth stack of the India stack.
That's quite interesting. And for all the international viewers out here, so the India stack is the large pillars of digitization that the government brought in, building a multi-stakeholder approach. We have the highest amount of Indians who got a digital identity through the almost 90% of our country has an Aadhaar card and a digital identity. We also have the DigiLocker, and at this point, we're one of the countries leading in the forefront, where even real estate documents, especially for farmers, are actually being issued on the digital locker. And all the, whether it's your driver's license or whether it's your PAN card or any ID issued by the government, or whether it's your marks card for your class 10, all of that now can be digitally issued on a DigiLocker. So this is kind of a very important secure way of having all of your documents that you get from the government, and being paperless, right? That's a very important initiative. And recently the government kicked off the account aggregator framework, like Mr. Rana mentioned, and that's quite exciting. That leads me to the next question, right? So all of the other firms was either looking at payments, it was looking at digital identity, and it was looking at getting different forms of ID from the government, right? But now we're looking at how you could get into the open banking system and how there can be data sharing across the economy, across important regulated players to kind of open a different foray of financial services. So I'm really excited to hear your thoughts of what you think about the new account aggregator framework.
So, like I mentioned, you also mentioned this is the fourth part of the India stack and making open banking system and free flow of data in a secured way, and with the, of course, the customer consent. So the problem, one problem the customers or the consumers they face in the country is the flow of data, financial data, between the institution, the financial institution particularly. And 2nd September, this has been launched and it is active. So as of now, we also one of the banks who have joined this platform, and there are four account aggregators already who have been licensed by RBI, and three more hopefully they might get it soon. So the system is there, ecosystem is in place. Now we have to scale it up, and again in the beginning itself I mentioned about this, that this is going to be the game changer again, just like what NPCI did for the country. To my mind, account aggregator is the next thing, which will be a similar kind of experience going forward, and similar kind of change it will be, bring in the whether we call it financial inclusion part or ease of ability of credit and convenience. So yeah, this is the last piece I would say, and in the financial inclusion initiative, delivery of credit, timely delivery, hassles free. Yeah. From our bank, I can say that some banks have already they are alive on this. Some transactions have happened already. We are in the process of developing this. So very soon, we also would be starting executing transitions on this through this route. Yeah.
So, I mean, we're all quite excited about the account aggregator framework and look forward to all the large banks leading the way to drive the UPI transactions overtook the POS transactions during the pandemic, and we hope that we see these kind of numbers for the account aggregator usage going forward. So keeping that in mind, right, what do you think are your views on expanding the digital infra ecosystem? Is there something we can look forward to beyond the AA framework? Are there any key initiatives that you can think of, and what needs to be done now to make India truly inclusive and go after the 65 million SMEs, right, who are underbanked at this point, and the remaining population who, in terms of retail individuals in Bharat, who need better access to financial services. So what do you think needs to be done now?
So concept wise, I would say that things are in place with account aggregator thing in coming in. So we have the three already, the jam part of it, the NPCI UPI coming in, the kind of volume API is handling, the kind of fintechs which are coming. So again, talking to you, this is what kind of value you have added to the ecosystem, the credit delivery and enhancing and easing the credit delivery in the country. But still, we are still a developing country, emerging market. So the challenge, I would say, conceptually everything in place. I would say whether some regulation has to come, so regulation is there. The infrastructure is broadly there, but we maybe need to expand the reach of the broadband. That is one prerequisite, and I think things work in progress, I would say. Uh, the connectivity in the country, it has gone up tremendously in last maybe 1 decade or maybe last 5 years, I would say. So reach has definitely expanded, but still we have some way to go, more to cover. Then biometric system, we already have Aadhaar identification, so we can think of how we further expand it. One thing still is work in progress, but then hopefully very soon it will come on the delivery of government sponsored scheme credit. Something is being done on that side, making it maybe little ease of delivery. So something is being done. That again a big thing which will be coming. Another thing, we are also involved as a key banking institution in the country, delivering kind of. You must have heard this talking about Bharat Craft or something. So some work is done on that. That's also again my sense is that that will again a big opportunity for SMEs particularly. So but infra side, a lot of work either has been done already or is a work in progress. So yeah, many things will come in next say 1 year. Next 1 year is going to be quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we're quite excited. So, if you look at all of the account aggregator framework and the fact that UPI transactions have taken created a record, that means there's a lot of data that's going to be available, which is alternative, which could be used to further financial inclusion. So, what role do you think data would play in the future? What about new technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, and natural language processing? Do you think they would play an important role in the coming year?
Of course, if you are talking about the UPI transaction, the kind of volume we have, but we know that it's not only a transaction, it's a data, something behind, and huge amount of data. So very soon, I can't say more than this, but some framework will come and looks like should come that how to use this data in a better way and maybe more productive way, how to use this data. But the kind of data we have in the system already, so we have to think about how to get this data used in a secured way. Of course, keeping the privacy and keep most important thing is keeping the privacy of the customers in mind and the owner of the data in mind. So, but some work is again is happening. Government is also in the process of coming out with some regulation or law on this, and other things are also happening in the system. Soon you will get to know. People will get to know. You might be knowing, but yeah, it will be out in the public. So huge amount of data we have everywhere, how to use this data in a better way. But no point. I will not be able to add anything that importance of AI and machine learning and the natural language process. So these are the most important things, and uh, these are changing the way we do business, the way we do development work. Yeah.
That's a very good answer. In terms of the last question that I have, right, what insights do you have on approaches to digital financial inclusion? Having seen what the kind of developments that we've had in the last 1 year, and you also said that we're looking out for very exciting things to happen in the next, 12 months or so. So, what would you think if you had to pick two interesting emerging trends or approaches to financial inclusion? What would you pick?
So remarkable progress, like we discussed last almost half an hour, the work which has been done in financial inclusion in the last decade or so, I would say, with the starting of Aadhaar and Aadhaar mainly, I would say, and PMJDY accounts. But still, the broad sense is that 20% of the population is still unbanked, and more importantly, is the poor and young people who are between the age bracket of say 15 to 25 years of age. They are disproportionately represented among the unbanked. So this is something is a challenge, and this is something which we need to address. Uh, but the kind of action we are taking, I hope very soon this gap of 20% will be able to cover. UN also, we have the global audience. So what I remember is UN also has come out with the SDGs, the 17 SDG goals, and out of 17, my sense is roughly 7 goals are essentially on financial inclusion side. So then we have the government side, the public policy or the government side. If we talk about the National Strategy for Financial Inclusion and document which is 1924, and National Strategy for Financial Education, the document which is 2025 5 years policy. It provides a detailed roadmap that how the financial inclusion is going to be driven and how it is going to be enhanced in a coordinated way. And yeah, this is so a strategy is in place. Priority is there. A lot of work, maybe 80%. If we are talking about the 20% only is the unbanked. So this other way, if we talk about this, 80% work has been done.
I mean, I completely agree with you, right? Even at Credit Watch, our mission is to enable access to financial inclusion and to enable SMEs to be able to get better access and cheaper access to credit by using alternative forms of data, right? That's kind of what we do. And especially we identify with the 7 SDGs that the UN has. Democratizing access to finance, I think, is one of the biggest priorities of the government at this point. And we're really excited to have heard from you firsthand in terms of how the largest bank in India is focused on driving financial inclusion both on the retail and the SME perspective, and is being a leader, to have everyone follow them by example of how to use different kinds of technologies, innovations to ensure that all of Bharat, whether it's the young population, whether it's SMEs or it's women or generally the rest of Bharat, which is in the rural area, have access to financial services. So really, really exciting to speak to you. It was a very, very informative 30 minutes that we spent. So thank you so much, Mr. Rana. We're very, very excited to have had this conversation with you.
Thank you so much, Meghna ji. Thank you very much. Pleasure.
Absolutely. I second Ms. Meghna here. Thank you so much, both of you, for coming forward and having this very pertinent discussion for our delegates right here on the screen. Thank you so much once again for your time and your insights here. Thank you once again. And to all our delegates, stay tuned right here with us as we have informed, reminding all of you back again that 12:45 p.m. is going to be the fireside chat where we're going to talk about fintech growth, data privacy versus democratization. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Thank you.
So my best wishes for the huge success of the conference. Is already, I think, hugely successful already. Yeah, my best wishes. Meghna ji, good day.
Thank you, Mr. Rana. Good day. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Rana. Thank you, Ms. Suryakumar. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody. Stay tuned for the next session. We'll be right back.